How is everyone doing? So probably this, can you hear me okay? My talk, the next 40 minutes or so would be slightly different from what you have heard so far. And in my current role with Microsoft, I just talk about analytics. I love data, and I'm a production engineer and a philosopher, if I could say that, especially to what Alan just commented on in the last session, like how these two worlds are converging. I always keep thinking about that, and how the analytics is so pervasive. Data is everywhere. How is it going to shape our world? So the intent of this session, if you look at it from my perspective, is to show you the future, or the way I look at the intelligent world. In the morning, Professor Sahni commented that if you add digital to anything, it becomes intelligent. So that's how I see the world. As I should have the clicker here. That's how I should see the world. Everything is digital if you look at it. Sometimes I start thinking as a philosopher, maybe one day we'll have a sensor that is counting the number of breaths we are taking. So you never know how things will shape up. But this session is all about, in my current role, I work with almost all the global banks, financial services institutions, and healthcare companies. And I'm trying to portray a picture of how they are looking at this data and what kind of challenges they are trying to solve. And at the same time, I want you to, when you leave this session, look at what companies, technology vendors like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, or any vendor you talk about, they are looking at helping businesses disrupt or change or reinvent themselves. Okay, maybe I'm using the wrong clicker. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, my plan is to walk you through these three legs: context and convergence. So I'm going to touch upon the way Microsoft looks at how our world has evolved in terms of data and what is the future of it, and then touch upon some use cases, how customers are looking at using those tools, getting insights out of that data with some real life use cases, how things customers are doing. And then in this room, how many of us are from the business side versus IT side? Maybe business side? So around 60%. And IT? Okay, that's a good healthy mix. I can say maybe 20-30% is IT. The key thing that I've seen with banks and these companies, if you look at it, the way technology vendors are trying to solve that is all about trying to get everybody to collaborate. And that's what I see. We talked about speed, we talked about agility, and our CEO, or these days they have this term which is very, very liberally used about growth hacking or growth mindset. So he starts talking about thinking in experimental, doing more experiments, how often you fail. Instead of, and maybe Alan and we were discussing this, instead of looking at projects like defining a 7-month horizon, 12-month horizon, the markets are changing. So how can you look at your world, changing your world in terms of experiments? Let's say you get a live feedback from a customer from Facebook, and how can you incorporate it right away and create a version of your product or service in the shortest possible time, test it out, and then create a new revenue stream? So in the background, if you look at it, how can technology enable that? Make sure that you can do that instead of, if you are business, you're not being hindered by the technology side to wait for data to get to you so that you can run your business models, you can run your analytics to be able to get insights and make those changes that you want to do, that you want to make. Okay, so these are the three trends that are driving all these transformations or all these disruptions. One is data explosion, which we all know about. These days, everything is digital. Everything, the beauty of data explosion is I was told by somebody that the amount of data that we generate in one day is probably, earlier it was generated in 10 years. So that's the pace of data explosion that we are talking about. And I really, the commendable work that Yahoo, companies like Yahoo, Google, Facebook have done in this segment is all about being able to capture and store these multiple data types. And that's what, on one hand, we have data being created every day, every hour, but at the same time, we have the capability to compute that data in a cloud. So that's the power of, we have data on one hand. On other hand, we don't need to invest in big systems to compute, to churn things out of that data. So everything is now affordable for business people like you to be able to make sense of what is going around you, what your customers are saying. And that's where data scientists or quants or business guys come into picture, and they want to use artificial intelligence, they want to use machine learning, they want to use statistical algorithms to see how can they incorporate and predict how things will turn out. How can they incorporate those insights and make those short changes in their products that can impact the business. And I would also like to mention our CEO, Satya Nadella, calls this out as the fourth industrial revolution. He calls this as the data dividend. Data is ubiquitous, data is everywhere. Everybody is trying to figure out how can, it's like a $1.6 trillion business opportunity for businesses. How can you make money out of that? Or how can you get value out of the data dividend that's already there? There is so much data. In the last session, we were talking about PII data. I hope I'm not blocking the view here. In the last session, we were talking about the PII data. And I totally agree. We don't even need to look at the PII data. There is a lot of data about us available in the public domain that we don't need to, as a marketer, we don't need to look at the PII data. There's a very good case study on TED, one of the TED Talks I'm sure you might have seen, where a data scientist, how Target could predict somebody who is expecting. And I believe she was probably, based on her behavior on the public sites, social media, they were able to send her some marketing offers. So that's the power of data, which I'm talking about. It's not just the security and PII, they are there, but still there is so much data available about us that anybody could predict who would be the right candidate for me to hire. Instead of going through so many key phrases and resumes and all, that's how we see the world as, the candidates would show up, this is the ideal candidate. This is what we should go back to him with. So let's talk about this data dividend. Different businesses, like they are capitalizing on this dividend by incorporating machine learning and analytics on that data by making changes in their product and service. Again, in the session today morning, Professor Sani gave some examples of how customers are changing their products. They are creating more personalized products or creating value around services instead of just focusing on the core product that you are making. They are making changes on the customer-facing or customer engagement side, and that's another revenue stream for them. And likewise with operations, likewise with productivity. Productivity is a big untapped area that I personally think that companies are looking at, and I'll give you some examples on what companies are doing around these. So let's get into some of the use cases. So I'll start with McDonald's, and again, let's go back to the context, how I started this. So I want to give you a sense of how companies are looking at reinventing their businesses. And when you go back, you should be able to figure out, okay, where should I start? So McDonald's or any company, if you look at today, we have seen that they would have a mobile application, or they are trying to drive more commerce on mobile phone. So that's where Microsoft or our data science team helped McDonald's in terms of growing their revenues around mobile commerce. A simple use case is all about changing a customer experience. If you think about McDonald's, what do you think is the key or the most important step in the business process? It's any idea in terms of interacting with McDonald's when you go there as a customer, where do you think is the most key step in that whole customer engagement cycle with McDonald's?
Smile and have a nice day.
Nice. Smile, yes. Captivating.
The way people look at the menu.
The way people look at the menu, right. So so McDonald's probably paid some chunky amount to a big consulting company to find that out, what it was. And they figured out that it was, they need to make sure how can they quicken the time spent on the drive-through when they are reading menus, and how can they personalize that experience, how can they speed that up, and that could make maybe more revenue for them. So with Microsoft Cognitive Technology, we have, and again, I don't want to sound very commercial here, but I have to do justice to my job as well. So with Microsoft, in fact, I'm proud to say that Microsoft has so much proprietary IP that came out of our other businesses, Xbox and Bing Search, that Microsoft is using, which we have commercially packaged for for the customers. We have something called, now we have text analytics, text APIs, voice APIs, vision APIs, which actual customers are using these days. And so with McDonald's, what happened was there is a camera that we all see when we drive through at McDonald's. So the vision API looks at your facial expression. It tracks who you are. It tracks you, and they are still testing that. They have plans to implement that across the country. But they have completed some successful tests around it. And what they did was, with the vision APIs, you can see your sentiment or emotions, how you are feeling. You can detect if it is Josh, let's take Josh for an example, or if it is Josh who is someone who visits McDonald's every day for his breakfast, tracks what he orders. So based on the weather, based on the time of the day when he comes, in real time it would recommend the menu to save you time. Instead of you going through what is the best thing to do, let's say on weekends he goes with his kids. So on weekends, if there is that behavior captured, it will generate offers around kids' meal. So that makes it easy for the customer to make choices, what he needs to buy, and also creates a very personalized experience for the customer. By the way, we are also testing out the same vision APIs to scan the car number plate, to relate it to the person who is driving that. So these are the kind of things McDonald's is doing. So that's one. In terms of the same recommendation offers, let's go back to that. For mobile commerce, we created these machine learning models for them, which is purely for generating offers based on your purchase history. So during the day, if you are, let's say, every day you have this trend of buying something in the morning. So if you are driving down, how would you feel like there is a McDonald's within a half a mile or 1 mile radius, and you get a pop-up on your phone or your car's dashboard saying would you like some coffee, or would you like something, some burger? So those are the kind of experiences these companies are looking at, and the kind of loyalty that would generate with using these kind of analytics tools. Okay, so let me touch upon some more use cases here. Since I spend a lot of time in financial services and healthcare, I want to talk about something which Merck has done, and in fact that is a published case study. And again, a simple pharmaceutical company is trying to save money. If we go back to the operations slide, for them it was important to track the vaccines that they are shipping from point of manufacturing to point of delivery in refrigerated vans. How can you save them the damage to those vaccines because of the temperature in those refrigerated vans? So Merck simply started capturing those the inputs from the sensors of those machines in real time and were able to tweak the temperatures of those machines, and they are saving billions of dollars. And this is a production run model now. They are saving billions of dollars in those vaccines. So that's an example of a pharmaceutical company. Let's talk about financial services. I know I was talking to some friends from Verizon here. In fact, some telco companies are also doing experiments and financial services on help desk. Has anybody heard about bot framework? Okay, one or two. Maybe we need to do a better job at that. So a lot of these companies are trying to automate the customer interactions. And they are trying to create more personal experiences for, let's say I bank with JPMC. And every time I call, let's say I check a statement on my phone, and I make a call to their call center. I'm put on hold for I don't know how much long. So they are running experiments based on my data, my contact number. They are trying to prioritize me in the queue. That's how banks are working on. At the same time, if I talk to a rep, the rep should be able to judge based on my voice sentiment what I'm doing. If I am happy or if I'm sad, if I'm anxious, and then based on my history, past call records and everything, the customer rep should be able to talk to me instead of me repeating the whole question or whatever concern I have about the business. The banks are also talking about using voice analytics in their fraud operations. They are recording calls of traders, and they are trying to run analytics on top of what they are talking about. That they are trying to find patterns in terms of making sure that everything they are doing is within compliance, within the legal boundaries. Let's switch to manufacturing a little bit. How many of us are here are familiar with UPS? So let me ask you, what is UPS into? Can somebody answer? What does UPS do? Logistics. So I got a chance to visit. UPS has a big air operations in Louisville, Kentucky, and I got a chance to visit that. And for the first time, I figured out that it's an airline operator more than a logistics company. And I was amazed by that. And that's probably one of the ways how companies are transforming their business. They call it a maze. It's a big facility that they have, and it's very inspiring, if I should say that. On one hand, you'll see planes land. On the other hand, you'll see the planes take off. They have their own air operations. Everything they manage by themselves. The key for us is when I ship overnight stuff, the way they process that in this matrix maze, there are multiple conveyor belts. Everything is automated. There is probably 10 or 20% human intervention there. And they are collecting data about those shipments all the time. The beauty is that one of the unit heads shared that they have to make sure once the plane lands, it has to depart within the next 2 hours. So they have to ensure that it is going to the right destination. So the amount of error the tolerance that they have is very negligible. And the other example here I want to quote is they have also changed the operations to fit their business model. Earlier they used to have workers or operators in this maze, which were like full-time workers. They had to provide them all kinds of benefits and everything. Now they have a different model. They have a labor union. They work with them and they hire workers or human resources only on hourly model. So they would come there, they have a 2-hour long shift or a 3-hour long shift, and they'll just work and they are done. So these are some of the ways how companies are looking at how can they change themselves. Okay, so this is my marketing slide, and but I'm very proud to say that I don't know, has anybody kept up with what Microsoft is doing in the last 2 years since we have our new CEO? Gaurav and my Microsoft colleagues. Okay, so by the way, I am new to Microsoft. I have been with Microsoft for 2 years now, and 2.5 years, but I still consider myself new because, and like any big organization, I run into a new person every day, right? So, but I'm very proud to be part of, I call it the new Microsoft, which is open, flexible, and innovative. So I don't know if you have been following what Microsoft is doing. There is a lot of, and I didn't know before I joined Microsoft that we are not just a consumer company, we are an enterprise company. We have products. Microsoft is a bank. Microsoft is an advertising company. Microsoft is a data company. So the beauty of that is, instead of all our customers going through the pains of disrupting, reinventing your businesses, we have taken IPs from all those different businesses and packaged them as commercial services for our customers to use. And that is, and you can see that the industry has validated that approach in terms of putting us in leaders quadrant. You talk about Gartner, you talk about Forrester. All these services that we have created, the cognitive services, analytic services, they are all open. And when I talk about open, let me touch upon that too. Do you know that Microsoft now runs on Linux too, Microsoft products? So, and I want to touch upon that. There was the feeling about Microsoft that Microsoft is very Windows centric, and I'm not sure if some of us are aware that when our new CEO came in, when he released Windows, the first release of Windows was on non-Microsoft products. And I have to correct that. So I meant Office. The first release of Office was on non-Microsoft products. So our Office 2015 came on MacBook first, then on Microsoft Surface products. And look at Windows, which is free now. Again, the idea is to make sure that we provide our end customers with a consistent experience across devices. We don't care if you are accessing this data on a Windows machine or on a non-Windows machine. We want to make sure that you have the same experience consistent across different devices. So that's what means the meaning of open for Microsoft is. And talking about flexible, we work with customers that you might have heard about our partnerships with Salesforce, Google, and all our Dropbox, other companies. So Microsoft is all about flexibility. If you are using some other tool, we welcome that. We want to give you a platform where you can bring your own tools. You don't need to, we won't force you to, you have to eat our own food. Bring your own food. Use our table to eat that. So that's the new Microsoft. And the innovative, again, in all these areas, Microsoft is a leader. And I want to touch upon Brillio for a bit. So Brillio is, the feedback I got about Brillio was whoever I introduced to the Brillio team, to my customers, that Brillio is a little gem which was hidden. So Brillio is one of the, Microsoft has hundreds of partners. Brillio is one of the top 49 partners that Brillio, Microsoft supports. So Microsoft is jointly investing with Brillio in all these digital transformation pursuits. Okay, this is my last slide, and I might be able to give you some time back. What does it mean, the way, like you heard transformation, disruption, what does it mean to you? Why do you care? How can you take the next step? So the way I look at it is, when I go to customers, I talk to them, they are all in silos. And I go back to the analogy of a growth mindset or the experiment mindset. So when you're trying to run an experiment, you have to wait for one silo to give you something so that you can go to the next step. I always use, in my conversations, I always use the analogy of cooking. So you cannot, if you are trying to cook something, you want to make sure that everything is there in front of you. It's not like you're trying to cook, let's say, fries, and you go out and get the potato, then go back again, get the oil. So that's how most of the organizations are currently. And I think that's where the technology vendors can definitely ease that siloed form of the organization in trying to bring everybody out of your silos and collaborate more. So that's where you can work with companies like Microsoft or our partners in terms of driving those digital transformation pursuits, or how to think about what you are trying to do, and use these open, flexible tools to make sure everybody can participate in real time and collaborate. Thank you.